is caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it! Pass for Hopkins. Oh my goodness! Did he catch that? Did he catch that? That's the touchdown catch of the year if that's good.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
I think Carson Wentz throws for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in his return against the Indianapolis Colts to lead the Eagles to victory on Sunday.
You were just talking about him, Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of my favorite players of all time. Not only is he going to break the passing yard record this week, he only needs 201 yards to do it. He's going to obliterate it.
Welcome to 4th and Long, your weekly NFL talk show here on Com Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Jason Marcus and DJ Bauer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of 4th and Long here on Com Radio. I'm your host, Jason Marcus, alongside me, Francesco DeFalco. Unfortunately, DJ Bauer cannot be here today due to a conflict that he had with class, but it is okay because we are in good hands here between myself and Francesco. Francesco, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. We got 6 days till the trade deadline, and that the teams are making it pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to talk about that.
A lot of trades going on, and I think that is a great place to start. Of course, we have seen a handful of trades already go down this week. Eli Apple traded from the Giants to the Saints. I guess we should start there. As a devout Giants fan yourself, Francesco, what has been your reaction to this trade of Eli Apple?
It's a little bit surprising that they gave away such a young player who is starting to play well. I mean, I guess the Giants know their potential, and, since he was playing well, I guess they decided to trade high. And, I mean, you also have to account for, I don't think that team is going to be contenders anytime soon. So, I mean, trade high, get the picks you have now, and then, just try to build in the draft.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, too, especially with the Saints, because we had talked a little bit earlier before the show. I personally feel like the Saints, aside from the Rams, are probably the best team in the NFC. And so I definitely think, and they've had statistically the best run defense in the NFL. So you bring in Eli Apple, who's only going to help that secondary and really solidify the Saints' run into Super Bowl here. So makes sense for both teams here. But the other big trade that we had this week, and also including the Giants, is actually Damon Harrison, Snacks Harrison, getting traded to the Detroit Lions. So Giants, definitely a fire sale going on in New York.
Absolutely.
Did you agree with the Damon Harrison trade?
I think one of the most important things about the Damon Harrison trade is that they just dumped off a whole lot of money that they were supposed to pay him and dumped it off to the Lions. I think that they're really putting themselves in a position to have the money to pay players when they're finally time for them to compete. I mean, sure, it was only for a fifth rounder. He didn't, he was only a 2-down tackle, and they also have depth on that defensive line. I'm not too worried about that. I think that was a smart move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you kind of talked about it earlier about the fact that the Giants season kind of know that it's not really going anywhere, so you might as well get value while you can. So I also like the fact that they moved them to Detroit, although I don't necessarily think Detroit has any playoff contentions, but I guess long term, they really haven't had that forceful presence in the middle since Ndamukong Suh left. So maybe it makes sense for Detroit here as well. But of course, the big trade this week, the Oakland Raiders shipped former first-round wide receiver Amari Cooper to the Dallas Cowboys here for another first-round pick. Some people like the move. Some people call it moronic. Where do you fall on this trade here?
I think it was good for the Raiders. They get a first for their guy. They're able to, now they definitely have some capital going to the draft. They're able to move around and get some guys that they need. You want to talk about people who didn't like it very much? The Oakland Raiders. It came out this morning that they were talking to The Athletic, I believe, that they were not very happy about the way Gruden's been handling the team.
Right.
And, I mean, in all fairness, they are not doing too well this season. And I don't think that there's really too many players on that team that are safe. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they said it anonymously, and, luckily so, because I think they would have been next if they had put their name towards it. But, I mean, Raiders aren't doing too hot. Gruden knows what he has to do, and I'm pretty impressed with this rebuild, especially the fact that they were able to get a first for him. I think that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I definitely think that a first is a steal for the Raiders here, considering statistically Amari Cooper has not been great over the past couple of years. He had a pretty good rookie year, but then the last two he's really fallen off, been plagued by drops. He hasn't looked that great this year, so I actually think a first-round pick here is a steal. Raiders now have 3 first-round picks going into next year, and John Gruden actually came out a couple minutes ago and said he believes that he's done trading, but he's also gone on record in saying that Carl Joseph is potentially for sale. Carl Joseph, of course, a Pro Bowl safety for the Raiders who's injured right now, so not playing, so that definitely could potentially hurt his trade value, but another name on the Raiders that if someone's going to leave, it might be him. But someone on the Raiders that John Gruden has said is absolutely not getting traded is quarterback Derek Carr, and there's been reports, like you mentioned, that people are saying maybe Derek Carr is kind of like lost his locker room, but then there's also people within the Raiders are saying that it's catatonically false. So I think I actually agree with John Gruden here and the reports that I think Derek Carr is safe. I don't think he's going anywhere, and I think this is going to be the end of it for Gruden. He's going to build trading-wise anyway. He's going to build a team in his image in a couple of years. He's got 10 years to do it. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing is that I've been hearing that this is a hungry secondary market. They are looking for defensive backs. So like you said about Carl Joseph, I mean, he could still be there. You never know if they offer the Raiders something good. But, I mean, besides him, I think the Raiders are pretty much done.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be Giants and Raiders, and probably 2 of the top 3 picks in this upcoming NFL draft. Some other players that are talked about being potentially traded, we're going to start with Arizona Cardinals cornerback Patrick Peterson, probably one of the most coveted trade pieces in the league right now as far as people potentially moving. But the Cardinals have come out and said that they're not trading him. Allegedly, Peterson met with head coach Steve Wilkes this morning. They talked for about 30 minutes, and Peterson put out a statement on Twitter and basically changed his stance. He was pretty vocal about wanting to be traded, and he had reports had even come out that he picked his team and he wanted to go back to New Orleans and be with the Saints. But today he changed his tone and basically said that he's going to be in Arizona for the long haul, and he wants to be part of the rebuild here and their future success in Arizona. So what do you think? Would it be smart for the Arizona Cardinals to trade Patrick Peterson, or are they making the right move by holding on to whatever assets they have?
I think that they're in a position where they're not going to be contenders anytime soon either. I mean, I think that once Peterson realized he wasn't going to New Orleans, he kind of decided, where can I really go?
Right.
For the Cardinals, it would probably be a smart idea just because he is getting on the older side. Then again, he is a veteran presence that, that locker room needs. And then, next year after the draft, when they start bringing in these new players, he's going to be good to have around. So, I mean, if they weren't getting too good of offers for him, I can totally get why they would keep him.
If you're all right, we're going to play a game here, Francesco. You are in the Arizona Cardinals GM right now. If you are forced to trade Patrick Peterson, or if you're an other NFL GM, what team should go out and get Patrick Peterson?
Patrick Peterson. I mean, we were just talking about this before. The Eagles.
Yeah.
They've had cornerback issues for a while, and now it's finally really starting to catch up with them. That could possibly be a spot. I think, Bills, I could see that,
To be fair, the Bills need everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Besides that, I just think it's a matter of what his value is, because if I'm the Cardinals GM, I'm not taking anything less than a second, maybe a third if it's high enough. But I just think that's one of those things where the Cardinals value him more than any other team might.
Right, and I think he's definitely one of those players, though, that if he does go to a Super Bowl contender this year, he instantly, makes them more credible. For example, he's saying he wants to go to the Saints. If the Saints were to pull off that trade, I think they actually are favored over the Rams to go to the Super Bowl at that point. Obviously, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but definitely a big playmaker both on and off the field for Patrick Peterson. Another player in the NFL that is highly regarded as probably going to get traded, Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell, obviously. Very controversial, has yet to play, has actually lost more money this year than any other running back is set to make. If you're an NFL GM, which team should be trying to make a move for Le'Veon Bell before the deadline?
I mean, we were just talking about this. The Jets, Bilal Powell just got what could be a career-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
Career-ending or not, he's going to be out for a while. Especially with what seems to be somewhere in between a rebuild and, trying to win now. The Jets could definitely make a move around him. And even if they don't start winning games with him, they could build around him and Darnold. I think that would be a really smart move for them. And if I'm the Jets, I would do that.
I completely agree with you. I think the Jets making a move for Le'Veon Bell makes a ton of sense. They have the cap room to do it, and that's really the biggest issue with trading for Le'Veon Bell, aside from maybe like an attitude problem, is the fact that you got to eat that contract if you trade for him. And the Jets have some of the most cap room in the entire NFL, so that makes a lot of sense. Take some pressure off Darnold as he begins to develop. So I like that move as well. Obviously, people are saying he should go to the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles are going to do that. I think, again, just way too much cap room. They're going to pay Carson.
Too many players to pay, yeah.
So I don't see that happening. But there's a bunch of other running backs. LaShawn McCoy is being talked about being on the trade block as well. There were rumors a couple weeks ago that the Eagles were going to go and try and get him and bring him back to Philly. Obviously, that has not happened. But something's got to give here, and I have a feeling, Francesco, that we are not done seeing these big, flashy moves. I think there are plenty more to come before that trade deadline in a couple weeks as well.
Absolutely.
We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to look back at the week that was. You're listening to 4th and Long on Com Radio, and we will be right back.
Welcome back to 4th and Long with DJ Bauer and Jason Marcus on Com Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to 4th and Long here on Com Radio. I'm your host, Jason Marcus, alongside me, Francesco DeFalco, filling in for DJ Bauer today. A lot of trades have been happening in the NFL, but as we approach the halfway mark in the NFL season, it's time to start thinking about your final league end-of-the-year awards, including MVP. Me and DJ did this a couple weeks ago, but that was about a month ago already, and things have changed. Francesco, I want to get your take now. If you had to put a name on it, who is your MVP through the first 7 weeks of the NFL season?
I mean, you got to give it to Pat Mahomes. Especially, I mean, there's always talks about the Chiefs in the playoffs, about how they underperform. But if we're talking about right now, you have to give it to Pat Mahomes. I mean, this man has only performed for the Chiefs. You know, he's been breaking records. He's been doing so much for the team. And I mean, his performance is just a textbook definition of what wins you the MVP, especially if he keeps it up throughout the season.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I actually don't even think it's that close. That was our MVP, 4 weeks ago when we did this, and it's still the case now. I mean, look at the numbers he's putting up. He's literally a human video game. That offense is ridiculous. I think if you had to put another contender in there, I would say maybe Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that, even though they say that the playoffs don't count for the MVP awards, they kind of do. And, if it gets down to it and the Chiefs are out and the Rams are going to the Super Bowl, I could definitely see Todd Gurley winning it. First running back since Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson won the MVP award the year he broke the 2,000-yard record, which I believe is 2012.
You're right, 2012, yeah.
Yeah, so, he would be the first one to do it since then. So, a lot of really interesting storylines to follow here. But right now, we're going to go back into the week that was in the NFL. We're going to go game by game, and we're going to give our thoughts here. So, the first game that happened was a brutal Thursday night football game. Denver Broncos at the Arizona Cardinals. Broncos won this one handedly, 45-10. Broncos are by no means a perfect team here, but I think the biggest takeaway from this game, Francesco, was just how bad the Cardinals look. If you had to name, what can the Cardinals do to get back on track, or is this season already done for them?
I think this season's done. I mean, first thing they got to look at is that offensive line. I mean, when I was watching that game, granted it was Von Miller and Bradley Chubb on that line.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked atrocious. I think especially one thing we have to point out is that the Broncos won 45-10. Case Keenum had 161 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception.
It's not great numbers.
It was below half for his completion.
Yeah.
How can you win 45? How can you put up 45 points with those numbers? That just shows that the Cardinals defense is really slacking.
Yeah, also I think it just shows how good the Broncos defense is too. A lot of those played, including Josh Rosen, I think was through 2 pick sixes in that game. So actually, before we move on to the next one, what do you think about Josh Rosen? Do you think has it been enough time yet? Like, is he gonna make it in the NFL?
I think that he could compare a lot to Eli Manning in the sense that he is not the type of quarterback that could play with a bad offensive line. You give him good protection, I think that he'll be really good, but he is just not the quarterback who has that pocket agility and can scramble out and make plays. So, I mean, at least right now, horrible pairing him in the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I think long-term, if they build some pieces around him, he could be successful, but right now he is not doing well, and You hate to see that from your young quarterback. Bills are having the same issue where they're playing him before they want to, and now he's going to take all these hits. Hopefully next year they'll be able to get some nice pieces in the draft. Like you said, offensive line, a huge issue for the Cardinals. And maybe Fitzgerald also hasn't really been playing that well either, but Rosen's got a connection with Christian Kirk, so there are some pieces there, but just not looking good for Arizona right now. We also had the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers come away with this one in a narrow 20-19 victory, but this is now 4 in a row for the Bolts here. Francesco, what is your take on the Chargers?
I think that they're really starting to look good. I think Phillip Rivers, he's been proving himself all of his career, and I think just now he's really starting to go for it, knowing that his career's at the tail end, and I think that he really has a lot left in him. He had 306 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game under what was a very lackluster running attack. I think the Chargers, I don't want to say that they're definitely in there. They're definitely in the race for the playoffs, and I think that they could maybe make a couple moves in there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I actually think I see them as the biggest contender to the Patriots in the entire AFC.
You think so? Not the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think I like the Chargers more than I like the Chiefs.
Wow.
I think right now, obviously, Chiefs are the popular pick, but just historically, I guess historically neither of these franchises are very good, but I don't know. Something about the Chiefs I don't trust. I think they're too young and too inexperienced. I think Phillip Rivers has the edge here. So I don't know. I really like the Chargers though. They're firing on all cylinders right now. But what do you think about the Titans? Because the Titans have been super inconsistent. They beat the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles a couple weeks ago, and then they got smacked by the Jaguars, I believe. What's going on with them?
I just think, like you said, inconsistency. I don't take them as a serious threat just because they don't know how to put that team together for more than a couple weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Sure, they beat the Eagles. The Eagles haven't looked that great this season. They got smacked by the Jaguars. The Jaguars haven't looked that great as of recently.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think that they're a real threat at all in the AFC.
Yeah, I don't think they know what their identity is, and I think that's the big issue here. They Marcus Mariota is a run-first quarterback. They've also got Deion Lewis and Derrick Henry, but when time mattered in that game against the Chargers, they passed the ball, and it didn't work out. Of course, this is the game where Mike Vrabel decided to go for 2 instead of trying to kick the extra point and send it to overtime. Didn't work out, and they end up losing that game. So I don't think the Titans have an identity, and I think that's their biggest issue right now. They have talent, but they just don't know what to do with it. Carolina Panthers defeated the Philadelphia Eagles on the road 21-17. Eagles held a 17-0 lead going into this fourth quarter and led up 21 consecutive points to lose the game. And Philadelphia fans have their hands on their heads. No idea what to make of this team here. What can the Eagles do to turn the ship around, if anything?
They need to find some of that magic that helped them out last season. You were saying earlier about that offensive line and everything. They need to get that back together. Also, like I was saying, they need to find somebody, or they need to figure out something in that secondary, because they are not going to sustain themselves. I would also like to point out, I think the Panthers have been also looking really good recently.
I agree.
I think this is more of a Panthers win than it is an Eagles loss, really. They've been looking good. I think that the NFC South is tough this year, but I think if they weren't in it, I think they could make the playoffs, and I think that they could seriously make an attempt at it, at a wild card or something like that, because I don't think anyone's catching up with the Saints.
I agree with you. I think the Saints have that division locked up. I think it's theirs to lose. I also agree with you in the fact that I think the Panthers have a contention to make a wild card here. What I don't agree with you on is the claim that this was a Panthers win and not an Eagles loss. Let's look at the facts. The Eagles didn't give up a single point for 3 quarters and then let 21 up in the fourth quarter. Yes, Cam Newton had a big part of that, but really that's just a massive collapse by the Eagles defense, which is supposed to be one of the best in the NFL. And like I was saying before this podcast started, the ironic thing about the Eagles right now is the very same things that won them a Super Bowl last year are the same things that are costing them this season. And, they had such a great offensive line last year, and their offensive line has been absolutely awful this year. They had a great defense last season. Their defense, just like I said, just gave up 3 touchdowns to the Panthers in the final quarter. They can't stop anyone. They lost to the Titans in overtime. Last year, they had a dynamic running game with Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement and LeGarrette Blount, and now they can't run the ball to save their life.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that Jay Ajayi's out right now, right?
Right, yeah, but I mean, they don't have anyone. That's why they're talking about, trying to make these trades for LaShawn McCoy and Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson and all these guys that are potentially on the trade market. So, I mean, Carson Wentz, listen, it's not his fault. Sure, he made that bad play at the end of the game where more or less fumbled the ball, which has been an issue of his. But other than that, he was like 30 of 37. Like, he had 16 completed passes in a row and over 300 yards passing. Like, Carson Wentz is not the issue. If anything, he's the only thing on this team saving it from being, honestly, one of the worst teams in football, in my opinion. And that's coming from an Eagles fan. So, not looking good in Philly, but the good news for them is that the division is not much better. Everyone's kind of playing down to each other's competition. The Redskins do have a slim lead on that division, but I would not be surprised if the Eagles can figure out a way to turn it around. The Eagles could still win this division, I think. Moving on, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Jets. Minnesota Vikings win this one 37-17 in a decisive win. Adam Thielen has another 100-yard game. Francesco, is Adam Thielen the best wide receiver in the NFL right now? And if not him, who?
I mean, you can't take credit away from Tyreek Hill. He's been awesome. Granted, he's had an amazing quarterback play that has helped him out. Also, Adam Thielen, I mean, you kind of have to give it to him. What is this? 7 straight weeks of 100 or more yards. I mean, that's just, like, obviously it's going to snap at some point, but he's climbing so far ahead of everyone else. I think if I had to give it to anyone else, it'd be Tyreek Hill. But right now, I'm giving it to Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill obviously has been explosive this year, as has everybody on that Chiefs offense, but the numbers that Adam Thielen is putting up on a weekly basis is outstanding, literally record-breaking, something we've never seen in the NFL. So you got to give the man his credit. He's been playing out of his mind. Buffalo Bills were at the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis Colts won this one 37-5. DJ's not here, so I cannot tell you if that was a scoregami or not. I'm sure he will tell you next week. But right now, I don't like either of this teams, but I think the biggest takeaway from this game is just how bad the Bills are. Again, Josh Allen has been hurt. They played him a lot sooner than they wanted to. They can't afford to start Nathan Peterman anymore, so now they're going with the veteran journeyman quarterback and Derek Anderson, who obviously didn't help them much. And now they're going into a Monday Night Football game against the New England Patriots. So not looking good for Buffalo here. But Francesco, what do you think? What should the Bills do?
I mean, obviously, right now, they got to figure something out at quarterback. I mean, I guess if they just want to tank, they could tank, but if not, if they want to win at least one more game, they have to figure something out. Who knows? I mean, Teddy Bridgewater could be available right now off of the Saints. I mean, Derek Anderson, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Nathan Peterman probably throws 3 interceptions a game at this point.
Yeah.
Josh Allen hurt. They just have no one there right now.
I actually think Nathan Peterman is statistically the worst quarterback to start more than one game in NFL history. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the stat.
Good for him for keep finding ways to end up in the game then.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the guy's memorable. He's in the record books, whether we like him or not. But moving on here, a great game, actually. We had this one. New England Patriots were at the Chicago Bears. This one came down to literally 1 yard in the last second. A great game for both teams here. Bears come up literally just 1 yard short, but I thought Trubisky really looked good in this game. What has been your takeaway with Mitchell Trubisky so far in this year?
I think that the Mitchell Trubisky play is serious. I don't think that he's being deceptive at all. I think this is how he can really play. I think even though they didn't score that Hail Mary touchdown at the very end of the game, I think that just shows his clutchness at the end to get it at least, in that area and to a receiver. I mean, obviously good play by whoever caught it also, but I mean, I think Trubisky has proven, even though he didn't win that one, that he has a shot to win close games like that, especially against big teams like the Patriots.
Yeah, definitely a big improvement from his rookie year. I was not a big Trubisky fan last year, but he's kind of he's kind of turning me a little bit. I mean, I'm starting him in one of my fantasy leagues this week. So Trubisky has definitely looked like the franchise quarterback that the Bears have thought that they were getting when they drafted him. So. And they've added some pieces in free agency, and Allen Robinson, they traded for Khalil Mack, and all of a sudden these Bears look like they could potentially be winning the NFC North, honestly.
I've been saying the North is tough, but if they can get out of it, I think that they could maybe compete in the NFC. Them, the Saints, and the Rams, I think, are the 3 teams that you got to watch.
Yeah, I mean, hard to argue with that. Cleveland Browns were at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers kick a 59-yard field goal as time expires to win this one 26-23 in overtime. just absolutely another heartbreaker for Cleveland here. Cleveland has had more overtime games than anybody else in the NFL. I believe this was their fourth one in 7 weeks.
About that, yeah.
Cleveland, they have so much talent here, and they just can't find a way to pull it together late in games. What is going on with the Browns?
I think that they're 4 overtime games. I think that you should look at that more optimistically than pessimistically. I mean, they came off of 1 win in 2 whole seasons the past 2 years, and now here they are. They're not playing against the toughest competition, but they are playing teams to the actual end of it. They've been proving that they can go out and compete, especially when they play teams like the Steelers and everything. I mean, they haven't found ways to pull it out yet, but they are able to compete, and I think that's an interesting thing to see, and I think that Browns fans should be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of progress since where they once were, but still a long way to go in Cleveland. They got to figure out that secondary. They got to, find a way to close games, more importantly. But I don't think it's going to happen this year. Certainly a progress, but not enough to really consider them contenders, I don't think. Houston Texans were at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Texans got a pretty easy win here, 20-7. Not much to talk about in this game other than the Jaguars just once again collapsing. Blake Bortles was actually benched in the fourth quarter for this one for former Browns quarterback Cody Kessler out of USC. Kessler didn't look much better here. The Jaguars have actually announced that Blake Bortles will be the starter for next week against the Eagles here. So Jaguars, another one of those teams where they were looking really good last year, high expectations going into this year, and have not lived up to it. If you're the Jaguars GM, how do you salvage this season?
I know Gruden has said things about Derek Carr. He doesn't want to get rid of him. I would throw anything I have at Gruden and just pray that they give me Derek Carr. Because, I mean, Blake Bortles, I wouldn't say he's the reason they lost that playoff game last year, but, I mean, he's been proving that he is not – he cannot keep up with the defense that they have, and they need to find somebody new. There's really no one else out there besides, Eli Manning, possibly, because Tom Coughlin's there as the VP. Who knows? But I am doing whatever it takes to get a good quarterback up there.
If the Jaguars miss the playoffs this year, do they draft a quarterback?
I don't know about this year. I mean, I think it just depends on who comes and who stays in school. I think if we have 2 quarterbacks to decide to declare instead of staying, I think that they could definitely try to move up for it. Who knows? I mean, they could end up taking someone in the later rounds, but they definitely have to start looking at it at this point.
Trace McSorley, you're going to Jacksonville. You heard it here first. Maybe not. So Detroit Lions are at the Miami Dolphins. They won this one 32-21. Again, not a lot to talk about in this one. Dolphins started off the season 3-0 and have since fallen off quickly. But is Detroit a contender in that competitive NFC North?
I don't think so. I mean, they look all right. I just don't think they have what it takes to compete, and I think sadly that they're going to be at the bottom of the standings by the end of the year, which doesn't represent how good the team is. I will say one thing about the Lions. They had so long without a good running back, without an 100-yard rusher, and this is Kerryon Johnson's, third game with 100-plus yards?
Yep.
They definitely found their guy there, and I think that that's a really good look for Detroit, and I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I agree. Kerryon Johnson had himself a great game. I think you also pair him with Theo Riddick and LeGarrette Blount. They actually have a pretty decent running back by committee, which, like you said, is not something that they've been able to say in a long time in Detroit. So certainly making progress there, but it might be a little too late with that competitive NFC North between, Trubisky and that Bears defense, Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings, who are on a whole nother level right now. So tough for the Lions to be playing in that division. New Orleans Saints were at the Baltimore Ravens. Saints won this one barely 24-23. Justin Tucker misses his first extra point in career history and fails to get this one into overtime, while at the same time Drew Brees beats the Ravens, making it the 32nd out of all 32 teams that Brees has beaten in his career. What do you think? Was this a Saints win or a Ravens loss?
I think this is definitely a Saints win. The Ravens went the whole season without allowing a touchdown in the second half, right? Correct?
Yep.
Half? Yeah. And then the Saints put up 17 in the fourth. I mean, they look serious this year. They looked good last year. I think they really just developed their players a little bit more, and they look serious this year. And I think I'm really excited to see how they do in the playoffs.
Ravens' defense has looked really good here, but I think the biggest problem is on offense. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat here, Francesco. At what point do you consider pulling Joe Flacco and putting in Lamar Jackson, if at any point this season?
I mean, Flacco had 279 yards, 2 touchdowns this game. It wasn't the worst thing. if I'm the Ravens, I'd probably keep Jackson sat until Flacco seriously messes up, opens up with a horrible game or something like that. I don't think he's too far off of playing, though. I think either if Flacco messes up, I think that he could potentially be the starter next year. I think they might actually do something with Flacco. Who knows?
I think Flacco is the biggest trade bait in the NFL right now, considering you have Lamar Jackson there. Although Lamar Jackson did get a rushing touchdown in this game when they had Flacco line up at wide receiver and had Lamar Jackson to get the ball out of the shotgun and then run it in. So they're finding ways to get him involved. It's just a matter of time before he's on the field for every play, though. We also had the Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Redskins. Redskins won this one 20-17 after the Cowboys missed a game-tying field goal here. Obviously, we talked about earlier, the Cowboys traded for Amari Cooper to try and help their struggles here, but Redskins have a narrow lead in this NFC East division, but what is your take on the Redskins overall?
I'll say this about the Redskins. They held Zeke Elliott to 33 yards rushing and then 9 yards passing. That's something that you have to look at. And then also, Adrian Peterson's been playing well. I mean, at this age, he's been doing really well. I think it's getting to the point where the Redskins have proven that they can win the East. It's not the toughest thing to do at this point, but I mean, they look good. I don't really see them as a threat at all. But, who knows? I think that they could definitely stand a chance against in the wild card rounds in the playoffs.
I've always said this. I actually thought that the move to let Kirk Cousins go in free agency and sign Alex Smith was actually an upgrade. And you know what? So far, they're proving me right because they are leading that division. Alex Smith is still playing really good football. It's funny that between him and Adrian Peterson, they're the ones running that offense, since those are two probably of some of the oldest players in the entire NFL at this point. Vernon Davis is also on that team, so probably the oldest team in football if you were to do it by roster. But, hey, it's whatever's working, and right now it's working for them. The question is, can they keep it up throughout the rest of the season? We're just going to have to tune in and find out. Last couple games here, we had the LA Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. LA continues their undefeated streak, winning this one 39-10. 49ers have not looked at anywhere where people thought they would be. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo's injury is a big reason for that. How long do the Rams keep this undefeated streak going?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this right now. Next week they play the Packers. Week after that they play the Saints. Week after that they play the Seahawks, and then the Chiefs, and then Lions and Bears. I mean, honestly, they are looking like the best team in football right now. I don't think that there's any way that they survive these next 6 games, without one single loss, because this is a really tough schedule at this point. I think if they're going to lose one, I might have to give it to the Saints or maybe the Bears at the very end of it. But
I absolutely agree with you. I think the Rams have looked absolutely phenomenal for this point, but like you said, that stretch of games they got coming up is absolutely no joke. You got to believe at least they're going to drop at least one of them, and if they manage to go undefeated throughout that all, then I don't know how you don't consider them Super Bowl favorites after that, because those are probably 6 of the top teams in the entire NFL right there. Also, Sunday Night Football, we had the Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, that Chiefs offense looking absolutely ridiculous, firing on all cylinders, winning this one 45-10. Bengals looked absolutely pathetic in this one, but got to give the credit where credit's due. Kansas City, they are looking like the best team in the AFC at least.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that the Bengals looked all right going into this game, and
they
just really blew it. I just don't know if that speaks to the Chiefs or if that speaks to the Bengals. I think people are skeptical about the Chiefs just because of their history, and also I don't think their defense can really keep up with some of the better teams. But, I mean, who knows? With the way they play now against a team that's not bad at all, I mean, maybe they do really have a shot. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big fan of the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually thought going into this year that they were going to be the worst team in the entire AFC North. I thought the Browns were going to have a better record for them. They've definitely surprised me. They're definitely not as bad as I thought they were going to be, but they're certainly not good enough in my eyes to make them contenders in the AFC in any stretch of the imagination. So, I don't know. I think they're right where they're meant to be at this point. And then the last game of this week, we have the New York Giants at the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football. Falcons got a rare win here, 23-10 over the Giants. Giants continue their skid. What did you think about this game, Francesco?
I will say this. 1 yard away from 400 yards for Eli Manning. And then he also had 2 more than 100-yard receivers this game. I mean, I remember last week I was talking about how this was going to be a blowout and everything. I'm kind of impressed with how they did. And, I mean, season's over at this point, 1-6. They're not doing anything. But I'm actually very impressed with how they played. Falcons' line didn't look too good. I mean, they haven't looked that good at all this season.
No.
But, I mean, it wasn't the toughest competition to beat. I don't think this win really proves a lot for the Falcons. it was a good performance offensively for the Giants, and I'm kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I think Saquon Barkley continues to deliver in spades here. He's probably the only bright spot of that entire offense. So Giants were close to getting a win here. Odell Beckham played really well on Monday Night Football, but just not enough to pull out the W here. Falcons get the win, and that's going to wrap it up for Week 7. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, we are going to give our official predictions for Week 8 as well as our bold predictions to wrap up the show. So you're listening to 4th and Long on Com Radio, and we will be right back.
You're listening to 4th and Long with DJ Bauer and Jason Marcus here on Com Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to 4th and Long here on Com Radio. I'm Jason Marcus, alongside me, Francesco DeFalco, filling in for DJ Bauer, who is absent to attend something that he had to do for class. But we are here. We just finished breaking down Week 7 in the NFL, and now we look forward to Week 8. To start off this week, we got a Thursday night football matchup between the Miami Dolphins at the Houston Texans. Two are probably the most underperforming teams in the entire AFC, if not the NFL. So not a lot to look forward to on Thursday night. But what's the biggest storyline that you're looking for at this game, Francesco?
I'm looking at Deshaun Watson. I think he's had, flashes of what he could be this season so far, and I think this could go either way. I mean, I think the Dolphins might be able to pull an upset at home. If Watson plays well, I think the Texans are going to pull this one out.
I agree with you. That is my official pick as well. I think the Texans are going to win this one at home. I don't really like either of these teams long term. I think if Deshaun Watson and the Texans can pull it together, they may be able to make a run for the AFC South. But none of those teams are really striking me as legitimate contenders. But on the record, I'm going to say that the Houston Texans get a win on Thursday night. The first game we have on Sunday is an early one. It's starting at 9:30 in the morning Eastern Time because it is being played in London. It is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Speaking of underperforming teams, both of these teams were arguably two of the best teams in football last year, and now neither of them really know what direction their season is going. But who do you think is going to be able to pull out the win in London?
I know you'd hate to hear this, but Eagles, that defense, not the toughest one that the Jaguars are going to play. I think Blake Bortles knows that this is a prove-it game for him. I think he knows that, if he played a good defense, he could throw his picks, it happens, but he's going to be held accountable for everything that happens this game. He could really be playing well because of it. So I'm going to have to give this one to the Jaguars, the London natives at this point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think that's a bad pick. Obviously, the Eagles have been struggling massively over the past couple of weeks. I'm actually going to go with the Eagles on this one, though. I know they just gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter to the Panthers. But I similarly, you say this is a prove-it game for the Bortles and the Jaguars. This is a prove-it game for everyone on the Eagles for me. And I think the deciding factor comes down to the quarterbacks, and I just like Carson Wentz a heck of a lot more than I like Blake Bortles. I think he gets it done here, and the Eagles get a big win, and they try to build momentum for the rest of the second half of the season, honestly. Baltimore Ravens at the Carolina Panthers. Francesco, who do you have?
I'm going to have to give this one to the Panthers. I think they know that if they want a shot at the playoffs this year, they're going to have to be beating the teams, that the Saints or, the Bucs or the Falcons beat. This is going to be a tough one. I think, you have a team that was great defensively in the second half all year, just fall apart, playing, an offense that came back tremendously in the fourth quarter in, the game they just played. So, I mean, it's a home game for the Panthers. I think that this one, it's going to be a really good game for the Panthers. I'm going to give it to them.
I agree with you on this one. I think the Panthers are going to win this one at home. I feel like they're on the upswing now, especially after the momentum that's been caused after that win against the Eagles last week. I think they continue their hot streak here, but I do think it'll be a very close and good game. Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs have been looking hot. Broncos just coming off a 45-10 win over Arizona on Thursday Night Football, so could be a good matchup or it could go either way, but where do you think this one ends up?
These games are always fun to watch, but then again, I think these teams are a little bit closer skill-wise whenever they play. I'm going to have to give this one to the Chiefs. I don't think there's really anything about the Broncos besides their pass rush, but the Chiefs have just been looking so good all around. I just don't see how they could possibly lose this one, so I'm going to give it to them. I
mean, I honestly just smell an upset alert here. I think if the Broncos are able to get pressure on Pat Mahomes, that the Broncos have a good enough defense that they could find a way to win this one. With that being said, though, I'm going with the Chiefs to pull out the win here just because that offense is looking way too good. But don't be surprised if the Broncos find a way to get the upset. But on the record, I'm going to say that the Chiefs win it. Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers, a rematch from their Week 1 tie. Francesco, does this one end in a tie as well?
No, but I think this is my upset one. Browns, I think they're going to be tired of, all these late games and everything, and I think they're going to be hungry for that win that they almost got in the first week but couldn't quite pull out. Baker Mayfield, he's had some experience. He's going to be ready. I think that the Browns may be able to pull this one off in Heinz Field.
I thought for sure the Browns were going to win this past week against the Buccaneers. They couldn't get it done, and I don't see them getting it done this week. I know that they almost beat them in Week 1, but that was almost 7 weeks ago at this point. The Steelers have looked a lot better than they did at the beginning of the season. James Conner's coming. The Steelers are coming off a bye. James Conner's on a roll. I think the Steelers' offense has way too many weapons at this point, so I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win this one. The Seattle Seahawks at the Detroit Lions. A interesting game. Francesco, who do you think is going to come out as the winner?
I mean, like I said, I don't think the Lions' record really represents what they can do. I think that they've been better than their record shows. I think we're going to have to give this to them. Kerryon Johnson, I think he's going to have another good game, and I think it's going to be tough to beat them when you have an 100-plus yard rusher like him.
Yeah, I think this is actually going to be very interesting for the fact that I think the biggest players to watch are the two running backs in this one, that being Kerryon Johnson and Chris Carson. Two teams who historically have always been pass first, really, but now relying heavily on the ground game here. Should be still a good matchup. You got quarterbacks Matthew Stafford versus Russell Wilson, so I'm actually very interested to see how this game plans out. I'm actually going to take the Seattle Seahawks in this one, though. I just think they're the better team overall. I like Russell Wilson more. He's a playmaker. He's arguably a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm going to take the Seahawks one, but it could go either way. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think either of these teams are for real, but Francesco, which one gets the win on Sunday?
I think I'm going to have to give it to Cincinnati. I think Tampa Bay is going to be taken by surprise. I mean, they pulled off a great win, but then again, it was at the very last second to the Browns. And, Cincinnati, they got pummeled, but it was to the Chiefs. I think that they're going to be angry. I mean, and you don't like the Bengals when they're angry, they're going to be angry about last week, and, they're going to come back, and I think they're going to pull this one out.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bengals, like I said, I don't really like either of these teams, but I think Cincinnati, they're playing at home field advantage. I think A.J. Green is going to come back. He's going to have a great game here. So I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals on this one, but you never really know what you get from either of these teams from week to week. New York Jets at the Chicago Bears. I think this one's pretty clear, but where do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think this one's to the Bears. I mean, the Jets, they've had flashes. Sam Darnold's looked good at times. I think the Bears have that kind of secondary, especially with, Adrian Amos and Prince Mukamura there and guys like that will make Sam Darnold make mistakes. And I don't think this is going to be a very good game from him. And by extension, I think the Jets won't be able to do this. And I'm going to give it to the Bears. Yeah,
I think the Bears are going to really destroy this one. I think the Bears defense is going to have a great day here. I don't think this one's particularly close. I think the Bears get a huge home win here, and they continue their momentum. Washington Redskins at the New York Giants. Of course, the Redskins are on top of the division. Giants at the basement of this division. But are the Giants able to pull out a big win here?
I don't think so. I will note one interesting thing, though. This is, a Giants home game coming off of, this huge, rebuild that they're trying to do. One thing about MetLife is that when the Giants do something that the fans don't like, they'll boo them. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eli Manning got some boos this week. And I think that's more of the important takeaway than anything else. Because
are they cheering Eli?
I mean, when he does something, they cheer for everything. But
I feel like they've been booing Eli Manning since he was drafted.
I've seen enough, 1 yard runs up the middle and just everybody boo it. I think the Redskins have this one. They've been looking like the better team in the East, and I think that they're just going to continue that trend.
I'll take the upset on this one. Why not? I think Saquon Barkley can single-handedly win this game.
Do you?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
An interesting one.
I mean, Saquon, Odell, listen, I know the Redskins are statistically the better team, but I actually think the Giants have more talent. It's all about can they pull it together. So I'm going to go with the Giants on this one. I'm calling upset alert here. Indianapolis Colts at the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders, of course, shipped away Amari Cooper this week. Indianapolis Colts coming off a big win against the Buffalo Bills. Who do you got, Francesco?
I'm going to have to give it to the Colts. I think at this point the Raiders might want to lose games. The Colts proved that they're not a horrible team by the way they went and stomped the Bills. And I think just, Raiders probably at the same level as the Bills at this point. So I think that the Colts could do something similar this week.
I'm officially going to go with the Indianapolis Colts on this one. I think Andrew Luck is going to have a great game. I don't think the Raiders will be able to stop him all game. It's going to be not even close. I think Colts are going to win this one pretty easily. Raiders are going to continue to tank here and try to get that number 1 overall pick. San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. If there's any game this week that you can skip, I think it's this one, unfortunately. Neither of these teams, I think these are probably 2 out of the 3 worst teams in the NFL right now. But if something's got to give here, who gets a win here?
I think I might have to give it to the 49ers. I mean, the Cardinals, I just don't see anything with that line on how they could pull out another win at this point. I think that, the 49ers, Beathard, while he hasn't been good by any means, and he's definitely not going to have the starting job once Garoppolo comes back, he hasn't been horrible. And, it might be interesting to see how Patrick Peterson plays after officially staying in Arizona, but I'm going to have to give this one to the 49ers.
Actually, I'm going to agree with you on this one. It really could go either way because I think both of these teams are pretty bad, but 49ers have shown me something that I was very surprised about in the coming weeks, and despite the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo, they're still remaining competitive. They may not be getting wins, but they're staying in pretty much all of these games. I look back to that Monday Night Football game against the Packers. Of course, Aaron Rodgers did Aaron Rodgers things there, but no one gave the 49ers a chance heading into that game, and they were neck and neck with them pretty much the entire time here. So I'm going to go with the 49ers on this one. I just think the Cardinals are on the downswing, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Green Bay Packers at the Los Angeles Rams. I think this is the undisputed game of the week. Really, really a fun one, and one I'm excited to watch. Rams are going to this one, of course, undefeated. Do they continue that here, or is this the game where they finally lose one?
Are the Rams going to lose the season? Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going to be this one. We were just talking about their schedule going forward. I mean, Packers are going to be tough. I think the Rams know they have a really tough schedule out of them, and they're not going to let this game slip away from them. I think the Rams pull out 8 straight, and then who knows going to the Saints. But right now, I'm going to give it to the Rams.
Well, wouldn't this just be the most Aaron Rodgers thing, though, for he to come in here and beat the undefeated team on the road? I feel like it just sounds too good to be true, so it's going to be tough. I don't really necessarily trust that Packers defense. Rams have been looking really good. This one's a tough one to call. I think this is tougher than most people give it credit for, but officially, I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers to hand the Rams their first. I believe in Aaron Rodgers. I've learned not to ever doubt that, man. So
maybe the Rams lose 6 straight. Who knows?
That would certainly be something. I don't see that happening, but I do think that the Packers have a very good chance to win this week. So I'm going with the upset here. I go Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, come into L.A., and they beat the undefeated Rams. Wow. Sunday Night Football this week, another great one. New Orleans Saints at the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, a rematch of that iconic Minnesota Miracle. I believe it was the divisional round last year.
Yep.
Or maybe the wild card round. I'm not sure. But either way, a great game for Sunday Night Football. Both these teams looking like 2 of the top teams in the NFC. Of course, Vikings got the win in the playoffs, but will they get it in this regular season this week, Francesco?
I don't think so. Saints look better than they did last year. Let's keep in mind that, while that was amazing what the Vikings pulled off, it was a little bit of a fluke, that could have easily just been a Saints win in that playoff game, and I think they're going to be really angry about it. I also don't trust this Vikings line against someone like Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport there also. I think this is a pretty easy Saints win against a not so bad team.
I wouldn't necessarily call it an easy win here, but I do agree with you. I think the Saints are going to be able to win this one on the road. I think the Saints are just looking way too good right now, especially for that trade for Eli Apple that shores up their secondary, which has honestly been their Achilles heel. So I'm going with the Saints in this one. And then the last game of Week 8, for the life of me, I don't understand why this is Monday Night Football.
You can flex either of the 2 last games and make it so much
right.
interesting.
I would much rather watch Packers-Rams on Monday Night Football, but nonetheless, Monday Night Football this week is the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. Snooze fest. Francesco, do the Bills have any shot in this one?
I think the only thing they have going for them is that they're divisional rivals, and the Bills, every once in a while, figure out some way to take on the Patriots. I don't think it's going to be this game, though. I think this one's pretty set. It's going to be the Patriots.
Yeah, I think Brady is going to have himself a career day here. This one's not even close for me. I think it's the New England Patriots. I don't see any way that the Buffaloes are even remain competitive in this one. So that is it for Week 8, and before we wrap up 4th and Long this episode, of course, we have to do our bold predictions here because on 4th and Long, we just go for it. So, Francesco, I'm going to start with you. Give me your bold prediction for Week 8.
I'm looking at the Saints-Vikings. Marshawn Lattimore, he's had a couple rough spots this season, but he looks like he's fully back now. He's going to lock down whoever he's playing against. Actually, I have 2, if I could say 2, if that's fine.
Go for it.
I'm going with 1. Marshawn Lattimore is going to successfly stop Thielen from having another 100-plus yard game.
Okay.
Also, 2, they're going to be looking at other receivers that game because of it. I'm thinking their new player, the new trade, Eli Apple, back with all of his Ohio State friends. I'm thinking maybe if they're testing him, 2 picks.
2 picks for Eli Apple in his debut as a Saint.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
I don't think the Lattimore Thielen one is too crazy. I think that one's a bold one that I could stand behind for Eli Apple.
All right, I like him. As far as for my bold prediction, I'm going to go with this Monday Night Football game. Patriots at the Bills. I think my bold prediction is that Tom Brady sets the single-season passing touchdown record here against Buffalo on Monday Night Football. I think the record stands at 7, so I'm going to 8 touchdowns for Tom Brady here.
Wow.
Why not? I mean, listen, they got something to prove here.
That'll make it interesting at least.
Right, something to watch for,
yeah.
you know? And I think if any team he's going to do it on, it's these struggling Buffalo Bills right now. So
makes sense.
They call it bold for a reason, and that certainly is. So thank you guys so much for listening to 4th and Long. We will be back again next week, along with myself, Francesco, and DJ Bauer will be joining us again. And we are here every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back next week. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.